Crime Boss Rockay City is a few weeks old now, and I think most of us that have played it share a similar sentiment. It's a fun, if unpolished experience with a few interesting innovations that can be hard to spot amongst the swathes of janky borrowed ideas from its obvious inspiration in Payday 2. Somehow, the game is both remarkably unique, yet frustratingly familiar, at times compelling, yet unflinchingly bizarre. I both love and hate the game simultaneously. It truly is an enigma worth exploring. But I'd say now more than ever, it's crucial that Starbreeze take a good look at everything Crime Boss is, for better and for worse, and pays close attention to what works and what doesn't. So today I'm going to explore exactly what Crime Boss gets right, from its AI to loot system, what it clearly gets wrong, from its storytelling to game polish, and the lessons that can be learned from both as Payday 3 nears its 2023 release date. First, addressing a previous statement I made, I've genuinely lost the will to give Crime Boss a complete review. I started the script and soon realised I was essentially rehashing most of what I said in my initial impressions video. There were no future surprises, and just about every complaint I made back then held true after roughly 50 hours of gameplay. I think when a game releases in this state, it's futile trying to put together a truly comprehensive review, and instead we should just bask in the visual glory of its many flaws. What I do want to draw close attention to is the Epic exclusive launch. We feared it for years as Payday 3 looked destined to the same fate, but fortunately, Starbreeze seemed to have already learned the greatest lesson Crime Boss is experiencing firsthand by rejecting an Epic exclusivity period. Publishers sign deals with Epic to guarantee upfront earnings and take advantage of a superior profit-sharing model, but unsurprisingly, take a massive hit to sales as a result, tend to divide their community, and for a live service-style title that aims to be iterated upon over years to come, it can be the first nail in the coffin. Judging by my own comment section, the Epic deal has cut Crime Boss off from a large portion of its potential PC-playing audience, and I'm happy to say that the same won't be true for Payday 3. But another worrying concern for Crime Boss is its staggered console launch. The Twitter account is inundated with people asking for PS5 and Series X information, and already a divide has been set. The Payday community should be more than familiar with this situation. Not a video goes by on my channel without someone lamenting Starbreeze's engine-enforced abandonment of our long-suffering console brethren who haven't been playing the same game as PC players since the Day 1 patch on August 13th, 2013. Crazy to think, and not something Starbreeze can afford to repeat with Payday 3. I already see ex-console players skeptical about a purchase, so it's going to be a massive task for the team to win back that goodwill. Hell, if they can nail crossplay in a massive co-op game like this one, all may eventually be forgiven. So let's hope the game is updated universally this time around, consolidating an even larger community than what we see on Steam today. Moving on from the strange business decisions Crime Boss has made, let's have a look at what the game absolutely got right to iterate on the Payday formula. First up, the crew AI. It was essential that Crime Boss nailed its crew AI, as the game's main mode is purely single player and requires the bots to actually function like human players. I'm not willing to concede that the team absolutely nails this, as they still have their moments, but compared to Payday 2, the computer-controlled teammates are hugely helpful, responsive and intelligent. Instead of acting like Payday 2's Goon Squad, these guys are able to assist in completing objectives, take active cover when injured, and are much more vocal within heists. Even if the focus of Payday 3 is on online co-op, it's still important to have functional bots to augment the gameplay, and I think there are a few great examples of this at work in Crime Boss. What I'm not suggesting is that Payday 3 looks to replicate Crime Boss's quick swapping character mechanic. I think that works well for that game, but is inherently antithetical to Payday's more hardcore cooperative elements. Speaking of those many crew members available to host alongside, Rockay City's roster is actually quite good. It overall pales in comparison to Payday 2's full gang, but I do think that characters like Ropes and Mozart could fit into the infamous crew relatively easily, at least better than Ethan and Healer did. Now, I'm not going to sit here and suggest that Payday 3 can learn from Crime Boss's character design. Overkill have already beat them in terms of visual design, voice work and backstory, but one feature I was really drawn to was the uniqueness of Crime Boss's heisters in terms of their weaponry and animations. I really like that essentially every unique or named character has their own gun that reflects their preferred playstyle, personality, or role within the crew. Runaway's unique pistol animations or Chase's customized repeater really spring to mind as elements that elevate their characters and help set them apart whilst playing. I personally am also a fan of characters having their own unique traits, which makes sense given their physiques or personalities. Of course, Teresa, an older crewmate, nicknamed Mother, is less conspicuous than the wannabe action hero Volt, so is rightly hard to detect in stealth than he is, whilst the roided up Jupiter is unsurprisingly excellent at carrying loot and can therefore manage an extra bag. While I find it potentially interesting, I'm not suggesting that the Payday crew need their own unique weapons or blinkered playstyles. One of my favourite things about the game is, no matter who you're playing, you dictate the style. If I want to be a highly polished stealth player, there's nothing stopping me role-playing a coked up Jimmy. However, where there could be improvements to Payday's characterization is in their animations and interactions. Maybe a smaller heister carries loot in a more visually practical fashion than a powerhouse like Chains. Perhaps more of a clean-cut criminal like Dallas takes out guards silently and efficiently, whereas the unhinged Wolf opts for brutality when taking down targets in stealth. Assuming Payday 3 launches with a smaller roster of characters, this is a much more reasonable ask that could add even more personality and identity to the absolute legends of heisting. Another feature I've been impressed by in Crime Boss is its loot system. Payday 2's old individual bag mechanics just don't cut it in 2023, so this is an area where they have luck to innovate. Loot items are instead taken individually in order to fill larger bags, which can be carried in stacks of 2 or 3 depending on your heister's aforementioned traits. These bundles of loot feel weighty and have believable physics without being as tedious to secure due to the multi-carry system. It's one area of massive improvement that Payday 3 will absolutely have to take notes on. I also like that some loot in Crime Boss is actually just physically secured by the team. The dragon dogs, for example, have to be moved individually and airlifted by chopper. Payday 2 is criminal in how it defaults to using the loot bag system no matter what you're stealing. A pocket-sized diamond? Bag it up. An ancient relic that must weigh upwards of 20 kilos? Keep that in the bag. It's a little lazy, and I'd love to see the team vary the items we steal and methods we use moving forwards. The ways in which we access that loot should also take a few cues from Crime Boss, especially when it comes to drills. The rather unforgiving minigame that Crime Boss went for to speed up timers is far from the ideal solution, but I do think that it's a step in the right direction to make fewer sit and wait objectives so that the entire heisting process feels more involved and hands-on. In terms of progression, I think Crime Boss, at least the Baker's Battle game mode, gets a few things very right. My Payday 2 empire just consists of having access to infinite funds and cosmetics at this stage. I don't have anything to really show for my thousands of hours of gameplay outside of a pimped out safe house and as many judge shotguns as I fancy. In Crime Boss, you do actually feel like you're building up a bit of an empire across the campaign, expanding both your army and your crew to take on riskier heists and secure better payouts. There's something to be said for this style of progression that I'd love Payday 3 to take into account. Being able to level up and improve your characters individually would be an excellent step in the right direction and again drive that heister loyalty that's so core to the Payday experience. Sadly, that's it for the Crime Boss positives that I'd really like to see the Payday devs pay attention to. The other side of the coin is a little more bleak, but is equally important when it comes to refining a perfect Payday 3. Crime Boss's first and probably most damning sin is its complete lack of content and variety in that content on launch. Hidden behind the veil of being a roguelike, which do tend to be more content-dense experiences, somehow this heisting game has launched with only 4 large-scale heists, as well as around 7 different smaller jobs which can last for under a minute and get repetitive real quick. Now, Payday 2 released content light. More than 80% of the heists currently in the game were post-launch additions, but its randomization mechanics and addicting gameplay loop carried things through those early months. To be brutally honest though, if it launched in 2023, it may well have been dead on arrival. Crime Boss has gone with a similar model, but 10 years on, I'm skeptical as to whether it will work long term. Payday 3 simply has to release with a greater breadth and depth of content if it wants to retain an initial audience. I do actually think that Crime Boss's 4 core heists are quite fun, if a little small scale, and it was the case of them showing their best in the very first trailer, but Payday 3 will absolutely need to up the ante. Let's not forget that our last canonical heist involved breaking into the White House. Another area where things just don't cut the mustard is game polish. Crime Boss is buggy beyond belief, has hardly received any post-launch fixes and still suffers from serious performance issues. I assume this came as a lack of testing and the publisher-driven rush to market that just seems so commonplace these days. This release now, fix later mentality has killed dozens of games in the past few years, so even if it means delays, Payday 3 has to be a polished product. Also, one of the reasons Payday 2 has been so successful is that just about any machine has a fair stab at running it. Performance has to be a top priority if the game is going to retain its massive player base and avoid a mass exodus back to Payday 2. I praised the way characters feel individually unique in Crime Boss a little earlier in the video, but now I need to temper that praise by discussing how limited the customization is. Outside of being able to choose your primary, secondary and throwable, as well as team composition in Baker's Battle, there is nothing we can do to attempt to customize our individual heisters. No masks, no outfits, no weapon skins, no attachments, no skills, no equipment, no armor choice, no pre-planning, no assets. Crime Boss does not let you plan or specialize whatsoever. This is a massive regression in my opinion, in a genre that finds most of its replayability in player choice and expression. If it wasn't for Payday 2's RPG elements, I wouldn't still be playing the game, and honestly think that Payday 3 has to go even harder on everything I've just mentioned that Crime Boss is lacking. More customization, more skills, more perks, greater weapon variety, and even more player choice when it comes to how a heist can play out. So far, recent updates have given me hope that this is the plan, but I think that ignoring this feature of the genre was Crime Boss's greatest mistake in hindsight. Difficulty, challenge, and accessibility is the final puzzle piece for a successful Payday 3. Crime Boss is not a particularly difficult game. Enemy AI tends to be uncoordinated, health regenerates for all heisters, and at least within Baker's battle, the challenge is front-loaded and based around the permadeath mechanics for Travis Baker. However, at the same time, things are so janky that runs can be ended by a single mistake, meaning for some people the difficulty is so inconsistent that it can be prohibitive to starting off within the game mode. My experience has been that anytime I've struggled in a heist, it's happened as a result of the ludicrous spam of frag grenades, which crew AI just can't wrap their heads around avoiding. Almost 100% of the challenge I've ran into with the game has been caused by cheap tactics such as these. The other examples of inexplicable difficulty spikes include the side stories missions, particularly the flashbacks taking place in Vietnam. These can be failed out of the blue and result in a premature end to these storylines, which can be incredibly frustrating. The upper echelons of difficulty in Payday 3 have to be a major focus to keep the hardcore player base happy, but the game also needs to ramp up and teach its major mechanics in a clear and accessible way. Death Sentence is an acquired taste that's not for everyone, so here's hoping that we receive a top difficulty mode that feels a little more authentic in its challenge, yet still keeps the most committed heisters busy for months at a time. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that there could be any sort of sideways development from the Starbreeze team after seeing Crime Boss launch as it did. If Payday 3 is to launch as planned in 2023, it must be at a stage in development where the majority of the more gameplay-orientated features will already be set in stone. My real hope is that Starbreeze has already factored most of these gameplay facets into development and are well placed to launch a top-tier heisting game towards the end of the year. But the number one takeaway that I want to emphasize is that Payday 3 must be a finished game on launch, despite the plans for a live service model. It needs enough quality content and depth to secure a recurring player base, modernize enough to capture a more discerning audience, and run buttery smooth without all the jank the old diesel engine brought with it. If Payday 3 can nail its core gameplay loop, the micro mechanics and features will fall into place with time, and I could end up 10 years down the line in my mid-30s talking about what Payday 4 needs to do to emulate the legacy of the legendary title, Payday 3. Here's hoping. Thanks a lot for watching, I'll see you all very soon in the next video. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.